Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Jobs Lab Live. We have a number of people with us already, which is fantastic. I had a bit of a false start. So if any of you were watching the false start when I went, right, we'll stop this and start again, I'm glad you're still here. So people are saying there is no sound. Can you now? You guys, could you speak? Because I'm being told there is no sound and Nigel is saying that we are frozen.
Okay, I'm going to talk to see if anyone can hear me. Can anyone hear either of us?
That's odd. So my definitely on. Let's just
Nigel, Michelle, can you hear us?
So I don't understand that, guys. I'm really sorry.
Now it's good, says Amira.
Now it's good. Now it's good.
Great.
Okay, now we're
fantastic. Brilliant. Can everyone can hear us now? Rebooted, yes. Oh, fantastic. Okay, brilliant. Well, see, when we said we wanted to make it fairly informal, I just wanted to know that was a deliberate cock up at the start, just to make us look like amateurs, so that everyone can feel a little bit more relaxed on the call. So thank you very much, Nigel and Ashara, Baz. Brilliant to see you again. Thank you very much for coming, Simone. Obviously, there was some problem with the original link. There's going to be a horrible recording of about a minute that is going to go up now, probably, which is me going, it's not working. So I apologize for that. So today, first of all, thank you very much for being with us. We have two fantastic guests, as you can see. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We've got James Kennedy and Suzanne Penny. Those guys who were with us last week already know Suzanne, and will know Suzanne anyway. She's the leader in community, I think, in job hunt support and career coaching and career clarity and everything else that she does. And James is, I regard James as the gatekeeper of decency. He is a coach turned gamekeeper. He has been made redundant, I think, 6 times himself, experienced exactly where you guys are. So has a really a very real, very aligned view of what it's like to be a job hunter in today's market. Hi, Sean. Thanks for joining us. We're going to work our way through 8 topic areas about setting up a job hunt. And one point I'd like to make early on is if you're at the start of your job hunt, that's great. We're going to be able to help you put those foundations in place from day one. The other thing that's really important is if you're already in your job hunt, this isn't like building a house. You can add your foundations and your disciplines at a later date. So this session will be valuable even if you're a month or 2 or more into your job hunt. It's very, very informal. We already have a few on board, which I'm really grateful for. And it's really important that you guys drive this session. We have our 8 topics that we think we want to go through. But we're going to answer every question you give us. That's really, really important. But also, it's actually a Q&A. So it's not just about you asking questions. Your contributions too are really, really important. So we do this all the time. Yes, we have particular perspectives. We look through certain lenses. We've got some experiences, but everybody's experience is unique. Everyone has different experiences. So if we're discussing something that you've had some experience, we'd like to share something with the group. Really, really grateful if you could do that. But let's move forward with the session straight away. First of all, I'd like to ask Suzanne, just give us a couple of minutes about yourself, and then James, if you could do that after Suzanne, and we'll jump into the session.
I haven't even prepped or polished this one. Hi, everybody. I hope you're well. So I'm a career coach and a career transition consultant, been supporting people through redundancy for 10 years. My background is 20 years within the recruitment and outplacement redundancy sector. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I've got a business called Career Studios, and I provide support to organisations, and also some really exciting things coming soon from me as well. But yes, do some one-to-one career coaching. Can see a lot of you on here, some of you who I've already met on Zoom, which is so lovely to see you. James, and I've been made redundant. James, not as many times as James. You've been through it a lot. I've been through it twice, and I've been out of work suddenly. But I know you've been through it. Is it 5 or 6 times, James?
It's 3 times for me.
3. Oh, I thought it was 5 or 6. 3. It's still enough, isn't it? Yeah.
So
what
James,
about you then, James?
Okay, so first off, thank you very much, Simon and Suzanne, to be sharing the stage with both of you. If you look at Simon's bio and Suzanne's bio, they got loads and loads of experience, and they actually know what they're talking about, right? I come from a perspective of having lived through job search and the joys of trying to find a job, but also the joys of being stuck in a job that I didn't want to do anymore in the past, right? So as Suzanne was saying, I've had redundancy 3 times, but I've actually changed careers 6 times. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about today as well, something is the clarity of what the heck I wanted to do with my life. So I've lived through the uncertainty, and thankfully, number 6 is what I've figured out. This is what I want to do. Okay, so I'm here to obviously contribute, but also learn from these 2 amazing people as well as I go through this call with you, and just have fun along the way. So in terms of what I do, I help with career transition. That's through the challenges I've done in the past, and I do one-to-one, and I also do group training as well. So that's all about me, and thank you for the time, Simon.
Thanks, James. Before we get into it, we've already had our first question come in from Sean. So Sean asks, I keep hearing I don't have experience. Recruiters are not showing interest in potential new entrants into the market. I want to transition into learning and development and education. What do you suggest? Suzanne, you've been in that space for longer than I have. So what would you suggest?
And even last year I transitioned into a completely new industry where I had no experience whatsoever. So if you are looking to transition, if you're going through external recruiters, agency recruiters, it will be harder and it will be harder to be found on a job board too. So it is much better to target organisations of interest and apply directly with a functional skills-based CV. Functional CVs are great for career change. It may be that you want to do a combination CV, but certainly that first 2/3 of your first page will be screaming around your transferable skills and expertise that are relevant to those roles. So if you think in learning and development, key skills of facilitation, key skills of potentially training design or delivery, there's going to be stakeholder engagement if you're going to work in L&D to really double check in terms of learning and development requirements. So be thinking about your experience that is relevant, even if you haven't done it previously. Use a functional skills-based CV is key, and target. Think about your top companies that you want to work for and target them directly. Speak to people in the education sector or speak to people in learning and development to find the warts and all, and to find out anything in terms of what it's really like doing that role. But you will need to be targeted with your LinkedIn profile, CV, and targeting companies directly. Simon, anything else to add to that?
No,
hopefully that's given you some points.
The key to it is that it's identifying your transferable skills and finding a way to present them where you can with evidential data. So it's not just you saying you're good at something, but using evidential data to support it, to strengthen your case. I think when you are moving markets, the consistent, and we'll talk later about the elevator pitch and how you create consistent messaging through your job hunt. Really sitting down and working on that competitive, compelling, and very clear set of messages you're going to use across all platforms is really key. But I think that all 3 of us are now in that space, and all 3 of us have started our careers somewhere else. So I think the most encouraging thing for Sean is to say this is a market that is open to bringing expertise in from other markets and then sharing them if those transferable skills are right. Anything you'd like to add, James?
I think both of you have already said quite a lot. So from my perspective, it's understanding the job description as well. Because even though it says development in education, there's so many different job titles, each one is asking for different things. So when you're looking at your functional skills and you want to put the relevant skills, you want to make sure that you're highlighting as quickly as possible the relevant skills for each role.
And Sean's just popped up saying that he has a functional CV that he developed with Penna. So Suzanne, that might have been one of your colleagues, which is fantastic. The one thing I would add to that is that what we call a solution statement, a career statement, personal statement, that first 2, 3, 4 lines and your first set of bullet points have got to be absolutely on the nose. It's got to get your messaging right. Your first sentence of your personal statement is so crucial when you are not the most obvious candidate when you are moving into a new market. So really craft that personal statement very carefully, and craft those first sets of 2 bullets, accomplishments and skills, really carefully as well. But if you've got a functional CV, and if Suzanne had anything to do with it in her Pender days, Sean, you've got a good one. So
yeah. I think it's really important, and use your network. You will have worked with people in the past that know how capable you are. So if you are changing, you've got 2 options. If you want to change, you can look for a completely different industry, or you could look to transition in learning and development within an industry sector that you know already. But I know from first-hand experience, when I transitioned a year ago, I had to really highlight my skills in facilitation, stakeholder management, presentations, design, delivery, and bring that. And even if you don't have the nitty gritty, that experience, then weave in those transferable skills. Okay, so let's go to the next one.
Yeah, Nigel has asked one. When one has knowledge, experience, and network, or clients, and you're fit, why would a prospective employer turn you down because they say you have too much experience? So this I think is a consistent feedback that candidates are getting. James, what's your view on the "you have too much experience" line?
So from my experience and the clients I've worked with, they're aiming too low. So they're looking for the jobs, from my experience and themselves, that's my perspective, they're looking at jobs where they can tick all the boxes and more, right? And sometimes I say to people, what about the job 1 level higher? Because you can do all these things, right? Because sometimes if you've got too much experience from a manager's point of view, you're saying, how long is this person going to be around with me for? So, you know, in your resume and your cover letter, if they ask for a cover letter, you want to be showing why you've chosen this role specifically so they can make that connection.
Yeah. Suzanne, anything to add?
Yeah, other than you may have that amazing skills and experience that they want. So yes, it is absolutely ensuring that why you're a right fit for that role, and why that role is of importance to you at the moment. Maybe your priorities have changed around what you're looking for. Maybe your motivators are a little bit different right now to what they were a few years ago. So it's making sure the employer understands why it is that role, that organisation that you're applying to, and how. For the end of the day, Nigel, you never know what these recruiters, what the viewers are looking for, who you're up against. But the bit in you're getting across, I've just frozen on screen. I can see.
You're back now.
People still hear us?
I think you're freezing a little bit. I have a nasty feeling that James and I are still completely fluid, unfortunately. I think it's better the other way around. But I think you might, I think we've lost Suzanne. I'm sure she'll dial back in. I'll pick her up as soon as she does. One thing that I would also say about the too much, too little experience feedback is there's a lot in the market at the moment about recruiters, employers not giving feedback after interviews. There are certain employers, there are certain HR people, certain recruiters, certain internal recruiters I have worked with over the years who go to the easy place when they give feedback. And "you have too much experience" is a really easy feedback to give. And I think sometimes at one level we're complaining we don't get feedback. I think at other times we're possibly laying a little bit too much store on the quality of feedback we're getting and the accuracy. I know a lot of people in the space who look for the easy out. They look for a nice, simple thing that isn't going to hopefully go into too much conflict. In a way, telling you you've got too much experience seems like a soft way for them. It's kind of almost like, it's a little bit like, what's your greatest weakness? I'm a perfectionist. It's like going to the easy place. So I think that you need to look at it yourself and see whether their criticism, their evaluation is valid. Does it lead to, should you maybe have rethought the application? Should you have played your application differently? You can learn from it. But at the same time, I wouldn't be overly concerned if it makes no sense, because occasionally it makes no sense. And that's just the fact of the matter. Also had a question from Simone, who's kind of from the other end of the equation. So Simone is looking for her first job, and she is hitting that, we're looking for a school leaver with 5 years experience issue. And there literally are job descriptions out there that say that kind of thing. It is tough. The piece of advice that I would give to Simone and James, I'll let you pick up on this as well, is that as you come out of your educational period of your life into employment, whether whatever level it is more incumbent on you than ever to tell a story. So graduate hiring is around storytelling. Very few companies hire the graduate for who they are. They're going to hire the graduate for who they are going to become. It's return on investment. So they are looking for potential. And you have to tell a story about how your past experiences, your education has given you a platform to be more than you are tomorrow. Sorry, more tomorrow than you are today. So my advice would be, and I'm more than happy to sit down and have a chat with you, Simone, offline anytime at all. But I think my advice would be really look at how you are presenting yourself for tomorrow. What is your potential? And again, try to use evidential data to indicate that as much as you can. James?
Yeah, so from my point of view, is obviously there's a lot of students coming out, they say they don't really have much experience. And what they're talking about is they don't have much work experience, right? But obviously, if you look at a job description, they're looking for, working well with others, teamwork and collaboration and all that. And it's like, if you guys are doing projects at university or college, okay, you will have been having to deal with other students and manage different personalities as you're trying to get your work done. That's still a valid example as well when they're looking for, teamwork examples and facilitation examples. You've done projects and things. Those are equally valid when you're coming out as well. Obviously, we're saying some jobs are asking for 2 years experience and you're just coming out. And it's like, okay, but we're focusing on the things we don't have. Focus on what you do have and what you got and what you can play with. Because that's what's in your control. If you don't have it, fine. But at the same time, apply anyway. So I said, because if it's a no, then you're in the same place whether you applied or not. So at least if you apply, you got a 50-50 chance of yes or no answer. But that's still a no.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And Simone, I'll get in touch with you after the event and we can work through this. Colin's made a really interesting point as well. And I recognise the advice, the thing about, so when you're asking for feedback, ask for 3 things that you could have done better. I recognise I recognise the advice and I think it's strong. I think we need to be very careful about when we ask for that feedback. Oh, hang on a second. Suzanne's back. Let me get Suzanne back into the room. There you go. That's better. Yeah. I'll quickly finish off this point to Colin. I think you can even take that one step further, because if you're dealing with someone who doesn't like giving feedback, who preferably wouldn't give it at all, the 3 things you could do better may not be the 3 things that stopped you getting the job. So I would actually slightly twist that advice and say, can you tell me something that the successful candidate, or can you tell me 3 things that the successful candidate represented better than I did? So actually get yourself compared with the winner, because otherwise I think you need to set yourself scales. You need to set yourself a path. You need to know how you're going to get better. And so that would be my advice. Just twist it slightly to can you give me 3 things a successful candidate projected better than I did? And it may be experience. It may, there are some times when you don't get a job, it is outside your, however much myself and Suzanne and James would like to pretend that we can help anyone get a job, there are times you are not going to get that job. And that's because there is someone who is better suited to that role than you. You may get closer to it than you would have done. You may even get it if you present yourself exceptionally well. But we don't have to always look for some sort of easy out about why we failed. Sometimes there are better guys. And I have definitely seen that when I've been recruiting for organizations like Capita and Legal in General, very large pipelines. People get close, but there's someone who's better. And it is frustrating, but you want to know how that person was better. I think that would be my view. So Colin's just come back. I mean, we need to understand what we mean by wanting feedback. I think that's great. I think that's absolutely right. Right. We've for the moment have exhausted our questions. So we'll start moving into the framework for today's session. We're about 20 minutes in now. And the first topic that I wanted to talk about when it comes to setting up your job hunt from day one is just facilities. I mean, a lot of people, I think a lot of today's session is to fight against this natural human reaction of crisis, which is I have to do something. And it's to satisfy yourself. You think you're also satisfying other people around you. Your activities levels have got to be high. You've got to be doing stuff. Our view, and myself, James, and Suzanne have talked about this quite a bit this week, is just take a breath. So you're likely to be in a situation you hadn't anticipated, or if you had anticipated, it's still very unpleasant. Fight against that natural desire to do something quickly because you're doing it without foundations. Suzanne, in terms of facilities, if you were sitting down with a new job hunter, what would you go through and say, right, these are the things you should try to get if you can before you kick off?
Before you kick off, even to have a space around you that is organized, so that when you do start, you will feel more organized than not. So having some space around you, having that clarity in terms of what it is you're looking for and what your key values and motivators are right now. But it's very difficult to do a targeted, productive job search if you're not actually sure what it is you're wanting to do. So I would even, you could do some online free tests. BarrettValueCenter.com is a good one to do some value center stuff. You might want to do an Edgar Schein Career Anchors questionnaire to really think about what is important to you right now in your next step of your career. So they can be good as a reflective tool. If you know exactly what you want to do, then you know you need the job search toolkit there, i.e. the CV, the LinkedIn, all of that's got to come into play. But I would absolutely have some kind of tracking system as well, especially if you're going to be applying directly to companies, applying directly to roles out there. They're going to form part of your job search strategy. So have a system that you can track, and then you'll be able to start seeing what works and what doesn't. So a tracker system, a space that is organized for you, and clarity in terms of what that goal is. Those are the key things from me.
James?
I would go with everything Suzanne said, and the only thing I would add to that is I always think it's quite funny that when you're out of a job, we're focusing all our time to try and get back into work, and then when we're in work, we're focusing what we're going to do the weekend on our holidays, right? So I always say to people, when you're out of work, think of it as an opportunity as well. Okay, there's things you said, I'll do this when I have the time. I'll do this when you have the time. Well, you have the time now. So yes, you need to look for a job, and I understand that. And I would say schedule it in. How many hours do you want to put in today or each day on the job hunt, right? But the first off, as Suzanne quite rightly said, what is it you want to do? Okay, if you don't know what you want to do, take some time out and use the links that Suzanne talks about to try and figure out what you want to do next. Because this is an opportunity. If you didn't really like your last job and you have this opportunity to come out, figure out what you want to do next. Yeah. Because you're going to be spending X amount of time every single day in something. So you might as well try and enjoy, try and find something that you like and you're passionate about and move forward with that. So yeah, that's all I want to add to that, Simon.
Yeah, I think that's really important to sort of moved on to the purpose piece, which is fine. Maybe there's an absolute possibility here that I just got these in the wrong order. So that's all good. I think the one thing I would say, and James touched on it, set yourself hours of work and make those hours of work practical to job hunting. So having worked in recruitment and having worked in large internal recruitment functions and HR functions in organizations, I can tell you now the primary time that you're going to be able to get in touch with recruiters and HR people and hiring managers is roughly between 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. So those in many ways are the key hours to work your job hunt. You don't have to work every day, 10 till 12, 2 till 4, but you should set those in not stone, but have target hours you want to work. And then share those hours with your families and friends and say, I could really do with your support. I'm going to be working on my job hunt Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 till 12, 2 till 4. So if you just leave me in peace during that time, that would be fantastic. And I think that would really help. So set those hours of work, absolutely, communicate them to people. The other thing I would just quickly say on facilities, I'm trying to stick to my agenda here, people. The other thing I would say on facilities is it's not just about computers and printers and mobile phones. It's about space. It's about, and we all have different circumstances we live in. So some of us do have a spare bedroom, some of us don't. Some of us can work at a kitchen table, some of us can't. So if you can't get that space, then get a box. Get everything to do with your job hunt into a single place. And if you're going to have to work it in different places, pick that box up and take it with you. So anything you have, any notebooks, any facility, any, your papers, your post-it notes, whatever, however you're using, have the facility to move that around with you would be my other point. And then finally, on facilities, be careful about email addresses. Bigboy@gmail.com is not a great one to send your CV from. Be careful about answer phone messages on your mobile, on your landline. Be careful about other people who can answer your landline at home. Try to encourage your 8-year-old who's just learning to use a telephone to answer the phone as professionally as you can, but also make sure they take messages and that you get those messages, because no one is going to think, oh, the message taker didn't give it to them. They'll think that you didn't respond. So just get those kind of things in place. But yeah, other than that, I'm really clear on what you guys said. Quickly into purpose. We've kind of gone through that. I think if you don't have purpose, you're stuck, aren't you, Suzanne?
Yeah, mindset. If any of you have been on my webinars before, you'll know that mindset is key with a job search. It's not just about CVs, LinkedIn, and networking. It's about your mindset, and it's about knowing what it is you're looking for. That's really, really key. And some clients find that clarity by taking a week out. Some clients get that clarity by meditating and taking that time. Other clients get that clarity from coaching, one-to-one support. So you get that clarity, set up a separate email address even. And I've got a client that's just had 3 job offers. I've had another client that was job searching for a long time and took some contracts, and then he's had 5 job offers, which is amazing, right? And there's going to be people on here thinking, I can't even get one, and it's gutting right now. But I would say how they stood out, they literally structured their job search like their work. And they had their breaks. They made sure that they were having breaks, but they dedicated that time to doing that. And the multiple offers came in. I know the market is hard, but that was both in the current market. So keep going. Don't lose focus. Don't lose faith. But take regular breaks is crucial in your job search as well.
Yeah, I think finding the way you work best under these circumstances is really important. So I'm before I started working with, I got hired in the Jobs Lab. I was working with a 70,000 headcount outsourcing business. I had hundreds of people around me every day, pre-pandemic, and now I work in the job. And that is a massive change for me. And I had to work out the changes I needed to make for myself to be productive, and the way that I work and a number of the guys that I work with now work is we work in 45-minute little works slots. With an absolute 15-minute break. But for every 45 minutes, I have an achievable goal. So when I go into my next 45 minutes, I'm going in on the back of an accomplishment. I'm on the back of my last success, whatever it was. Because most things you can achieve stuff in 45 minutes. I mean, the President of the United States books his time out in 7 minutes. So if he can sort out America in 7 minutes, we can sort out our job hunt in 45 minutes. I'm pretty sure of that. But then give yourself a break. We'll talk at the end of this, if we have time, about a really simple framework around building in resilience. And some of that is just turning your brain off now and again, giving yourself that break. Don't have too much whirling around, and finding that way that works best for you. When I used to write, or my main job was writing books, I'd work from 2:00 in the morning till 5:00 in the morning. That's how it worked for me. It drove everyone else I knew and lived with mad, but it worked really well for me. So find your own way, try different things. If things aren't working for you, don't be afraid to admit it and change. I think that's important. We touched earlier also, and this to me is really key, but we touched on messaging earlier. And Suzanne, you mentioned the elevator pitch, which is one of my sort of orange boxes I go on and on about. How do you construct those messages that you are going to use and will survive throughout a job hunt, because it's about consistency. I think that's important. Getting it right up front, or getting it close to right up front, is really, really important.
And it's important to have it right, because recruiters are going to say, what is it you're looking for? And potentially in-house recruiters may ask you too. And people in your network are going to ask you. So it is important to have your pitch, and it's your professional pitch in terms of, who you are and what you do, what industry sectors can come into there. The fact that you have got 10 years plus of learning and development expertise within a specific field. It's really thinking about, if you were stuck in an elevator with somebody, a CEO of a company, and you've got literally seconds to polish your pitch, that's going to be your absolute key skills and expertise that you want to get across. And it may even be in there, if you are speaking to recruiters, be really clear and aware of what your absolute best achievements are. What are the best bits you want to get across? Because I've sat with recruiters, and when somebody's actually said, the key things I'd love you to get across are X and Y, the recruiter said, oh, wow, didn't know that, didn't see that about your CV. Brilliant. I can sell you to them. Because the recruiter's job is to promote you and match you to a role. And you're the best people to know your skills and expertise. So have it nailed in a pitch. Listen to yourself, record it a couple of times on your phone to polish it. Have it ready for those recruiters, and have one or two of your key achievements, your shining light moments that you want to get into there, ready to share with them too.
James?
Anything else you want to add?
So the only thing I would add to that great summary was there's a lot of people out there that have too much experience, and so they've worn different hats, especially if you're a manager and you've done a lot of things, right? And the thing I would say is, in terms of elevator pitch, focus on the things that you want, because sometimes I see people, when I'm looking at people's LinkedIn profiles, they've done 7 different things. And I'm said, okay, if you look at it from a recruiter's eyes, what is it you want? Because I only want one out of those 4 or 5 things that you called yourself. So for me, my perspective is, what is it you want? And make it clear and easy for recruiters and hiring managers to see, this is the type of person I'm looking for. So targeted in what is. So I always look at LinkedIn as the magnet to attract your dream job. But if the recruiter doesn't understand what you're looking for and what you want, then how do they know what you want? You're making them work to try and read between the lines.
Yeah, I think that ties in with one of those golden rules about CV writing. Don't write about things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
There's no point in taking up space, valuable resume real estate, by telling an employer or a recruitment consultant all those things you don't want to do and how good you are at them. That has no value at all. The other thing I'd just put on messaging is, in product sales, solution sales, we talk a lot in the Jobs Lab about solution selling. You talk about features and benefits. Now, your experience, your qualifications, your skill, those are features. But always ask yourself the question, so what? So I've got 15 years of doing this. The recruiter's going to go, so what? And that doesn't mean there isn't an answer to so what. What it means is you've got to be able to evidence the answer to so what. Make as much of your key messaging, those core messages, benefits based and evidenced wherever you can. I think that's the only bit I would probably add to that. But I think that is really key, that too many people spend too much time talking about what they've done in the past and forget to talk about the future and the value of hiring them. There are certain jobs where a bum on a seat is good enough, but 99% of jobs that are hired, people are looking for value in return for their investment. So you have to show them where that value comes from, and that's through the benefits piece of your messaging. I think that's absolutely key.
If I could have a stamp on my head, it would be the word relevant with job search. Relevant info. I've seen so many CVs in my past where people will say, "Oh, I know it's got a load of that on it, but I don't want to do that." And I'll say, "Well, why have you mentioned that 6 times on your first page?"
Yeah.
And it's got to be, grab a red pen, take out the irrelevant things, and target it. Definitely, it's your sales document. Your LinkedIn is your sales window. So target it with relevance of what you're looking for next.
And it's about taking it back to that purpose piece, isn't it? You can't do your messaging until you've worked out your purpose. And your purpose can be really quite detailed. So you can talk about, as you begin to build a picture of the perfect job, its location, its type of company, its market, its size, its culture. We're running a session in a few weeks' time about how do you identify a truly inclusive business as a job hunter, because that is a really, really important cultural red flag for people now if they feel the business is not inclusive. So identifying those characteristics of the role, of your direct report, who your manager is going to be. I mean, there's a lot made about, you work for a manager, you don't work for a company. But just remember that manager works for a manager who works for a manager who works for a manager. So yes, you're working for a manager, but all of that line of responsibility and management is what is the culture of the business, the way they behave to each other, and it radiates down from the top. So look at the classic example I always did to mention, but Brewdog and James Watts. That failure to embed appropriate cultural standards has clearly radiated right the way through a global international business. So look for those things. Think about how far you are prepared to commute. Think of what the ideal hours of work. How much flexibility do you need around your work? I will never speak to anyone. It's highly unlikely I will speak to anyone after 3:30 on a Friday, because I pick my little boy up from school. There's no after school club and nothing's getting in the way of that, come hell or high water. So if I was looking for a job, I would need to know that I could stop work at 3 o'clock on a Friday, and I'd need to probably work from home on a Friday. So I need that stuff bedded in early as well. But once you've got your purpose, you have your messaging, and then you can begin to move into some of the other areas. And I've labeled it, maybe this is a catch-all, but I've labeled it about strategy. Okay. Sorry, I missed a question. Should we just go back to Said's question? It's for not just for me, Said, but thank you. It's for all of us. Which is the most important single step that most job hunters fail to do in the early days of their job hunts? So if you could say, you could only tell them to do one thing, one reminder, what would that be? First one to come up with it could answer. It's tough, isn't it? Said, you're tough. You're tough.
I think it's
Go on then. Go on.
I think it's structure. I think when you're out of work, you suddenly lose that sense of structure, and it's really easy to be at home getting distracted and faffing. And I think having that structure in place will be really beneficial to anybody doing a job search.
Yeah. James?
I'll go with that. I would say the routine is very important, because if you've gone, as Suzanne says, you've gone from a workplace where you've got your set hours in work, and then you're left on your own to figure it all out yourself. So having a structure, having a routine that you put in every day to say, okay, this is my working hours, and then this is when I do everything else, just gives you some balance back into your life if you've just been suddenly not working all of a sudden.
You know how we say everything's a learning experience? If I had been asked that question about 45 minutes ago, I would have said elevator pitch, because I think getting your messaging right, and I still think it's really, really important. But having listened to you guys talking for the last 40 minutes, I kind of go with it. I think it's about having a plan, having structure, but adding measures to that, adding those micro process point measures so you know whether you're succeeding or not. Because this is, it's a tough world being a job hunter right now, and you need to celebrate the little wins on the way to the big one. And you can only have those little wins if you know you set yourself a target and you've hit it. So it's targeted structure, I guess. So we're more or less in the same place. So thanks for that, Said.
And I think just a little bit, it's making sure that your job search isn't reactive, isn't just going to be trawling LinkedIn, trawling advertised roles, that you've got that real proactiveness of, I'm going to identify which people are going to really feature in my networking strategy. I'm going to really identify 20 to 40 companies that I am going to proactively link up and go after. I'm going to identify recruiters in my sector or through my network who could be beneficial to my search. So I'm going to be really proactive in that stuff. And I think where I see some people come to me, it's they've been searching and searching and searching for advertised roles all the time, fed up with the competition, but they haven't done those proactive bits. So the structure with that double whammy, that's where I see some good results coming in.
The point on job boards, so many people I've spoken to are kind of in that I'll use Monster and Indeed type place. But we're talking about long tail job boarding. So you're looking for the smaller job boards that are specialist to your niche. I'm not decrying the big guys, Monster and Indeed. And Indeed is fantastic. So obviously it brings jobs in from all over the place. But if you can find those job boards that are specialist to your market or your skill set, there will be fewer jobs, but there'll also be fewer applicants. And my biggest concern at the moment is the over reliance on LinkedIn. And I think that LinkedIn is really, really important. I'm not trying to pretend it's not, but I think that it is the easy apply piece of LinkedIn is beginning to give people false hope around their pipeline, because they've applied for 27 jobs this week by making 27 clicks. And it's so easy that they're not carefully aligned jobs. When you're sitting down, you're looking at your numbers. Yeah, my pipeline's looking great because I've got 27 jobs. 2 weeks later, you haven't heard back from 25 of them. And that's because hundreds of other people have also used LinkedIn Easy Apply. And they've made that same step, and the recruiter or the internal recruiter or the HR person is just looking for needles in a haystack, and is only going to respond to the needles. And so I'm slightly concerned about that. But look for your specialist blogs, look for your specialist job boards. I think that works.
And the other thing, yes, set up job alerts that are relevant. So you can use a Boolean search language, or you can do advanced searches. So I find that clients will say, I'm inundated with irrelevant jobs coming into my inbox. I have 300 a week and they're not relevant. There's ways that you can narrow down your searches to get relevant roles. And it's so much nicer to see the relevant stuff than have to spend hours trawling irrelevant roles. So yeah. I would say it's hard to know which job board the recruiter, the company will advertise on. But if you've got your job alerts set up properly, then that will really be beneficial to know that you don't have to trawl so much. There's always going to be an element of trawling, always. But having them set up correctly can definitely help. Yeah, can I ask another question? Yeah, type away if you want.
Yeah, go for it, Said. So the other thing, and I guess because of the pandemic and the fact we've been in a slightly different world, although we're now beginning to move back into what we were experiencing before, or at least closer to that, is networking events have dropped off our radar, I think, a little bit, and have been replaced by lots of things like this, which I think have value, well, particularly when it's us three, obviously, but generally it has value. But I think what we're losing out on is sort of the old job fair type thing. And so do look for relevant jobs, whether they're virtual or not. Look for those events that are going to help you build your network, help you talk to relevant employers in situations which are unthreatening and open. I think that also builds confidence. In the old, I used to send candidates to job fairs to specifically talk to recruiters and HR people on the stands of companies they didn't want to work for, because it really built their confidence. They could go into their completely unthreatening conversation. It was face to face. It was with a professional recruiter or a professional HR person or a very senior hiring manager. And it didn't mean anything to them at all because they didn't want to work for the organization, but they built confidence in those conversations. They began to understand what questions they were going to be asked and what they had to prepare for. So don't let networking events drop off your radar completely. They just take a little bit more finding at the moment.
Yeah, and there's some really good ones out there too, the way you can upskill and learn. So, it may be that some professional memberships, etc., have got some really good networking events, and you can be upskilling in this time. So take that opportunity for sure.
Okay, so Syed has come up with his next question, which is great. Do you worry that by taking a breath, which is what we said right at the beginning about before you jump in with both feet, job hunters may miss the perfect opportunity while they're setting up their job hunt? And a thank you. It's a pleasure. Always happy to answer your questions, Saeed. So this is a balance, I suspect, between doing it right and doing it quick. Where do you come down on that, Suzanne?
Yeah, I think you have to have that breath to have your clarity and your focus and your vision. That's really key. Through your job search, you have to have regular breaks to make sure that you're not at a screen all day long. So it's getting that balance. But there's little things that you can do. If you have your job alerts set up, then you can keep an eye on those if you're taking a week off or something like that. And I think don't feel guilty. But if the weeks and weeks go by and you've done absolutely nothing, then you know that you need to take some action if you need to get that role sooner than later.
Yeah.
That balance.
James?
I think all I want to add to that is, deciding on what you want to do next. As Suzanne's quite said, clarity of what you want to do next. Because sometimes we panic and we just want a job, right? Any job will do at the moment, right? And then the problem is you end up in a job that you don't enjoy, okay? But it's paying the bills. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place where you finally got a job, but it's not what you want to do. And because it's taken so long to get you in there, you're feeling stuck and you're too scared to try something else.
Yeah.
So, like I said, for me, is when you're out of work, it's an opportunity, if you don't know what you want, to really sit down and figure out what is it you want to work, and then look at the strategy on how you get there.
Yeah, I agree with both. Sorry, Suzanne.
No, I was just going to say that, we focus on that job, we focus on a job, but actually what we're looking for is that opportunity, which could be an interim, it could be a contract, it could be 2 part-time roles, it could be a side hustle. I've had a message this morning from an amazing lady that's thinking of doing something that she's always wanted to do while she still looks for that job that could be a bit of paid income. So it's having that structure, but it's also, I think, sometimes thinking outside the box, and maybe this is a great opportunity for 1 or 2 people on this session to do something that they've wanted to do for a while.
I think all that is all really valid and valuable. I think that in addition to that, I don't know many opportunities that are like, going to close the first day you see them, even if at the start of your job hunt you have a little bit of time. And I have had three people get to interview, and one person is now employed in a role where they made applications after the closing date. 3 of them made the application after the closing date, but it was exactly the situation. They were in their first 2 or 3 days and they hadn't got their messaging clear. Their CV was a little bit of a mess. It wasn't aligned with LinkedIn. They didn't want to draw the employer's attention to a really bad foundation for job hunting, but they didn't want to miss the opportunity. So they wrote they linked in, they wrote a really simple message on LinkedIn saying, this is my circumstances. I was made redundant last Friday. I don't want to waste your time with a suboptimal application. I only have 48 hours to get my application in. I want to just give you notice that I want to apply, but would it be okay if I got to you in 3 or 4 days? But when I've sorted myself out and I know exactly what I'm doing, so I just don't want to waste your time. And 3 occasions they went into interview process. One person saw a job 5 days after it was past its closing date, contacted the individual in the HR department online with a copy of their CV, and within 3 weeks they were actually doing that job. So I wouldn't get overly tied up with doing things quickly. I think there are options in ways that you can do things at your own pace, but whilst respecting the right of the employer to set the goalposts. That's really important. There's a lot online at the moment that frustrates me about candidates and or recruiters and or career coaches lecturing employers about how they ought to behave. I think that it is really dangerous for candidates to get onto that bandwagon, because everything you put on LinkedIn, every comment you make is there potentially forever. And it will be a part of the research that an employer makes. And I don't think any of us like surrounding ourselves with incredibly negative, bitter unhappy people. And if you put 5 or 6 comments up about how terrible recruiters are or how terrible employers are, and then you want a recruiter to help you or an employer to employ you, you've kind of set yourself back a little bit early on. So be careful about those sort of empathy posts, clickbait posts, which are looking for you to criticize the people who eventually you want to offer you a job to. So be careful of that. So that's one of my orange boxes at the moment in the market. I then want to talk. I think we've sort of covered targeting. We've talked about our purpose and how and I think a point that Suzanne made earlier is just so important. It's more if you haven't job hunted for 3 or 4 years, this is probably the single biggest change in the market, and that is about the proactivity of job hunting. You can't sit back and hope that recruiters and job boards are going to deliver the perfect role into your voicemail or into your inbox. It may happen, it does happen, but it's a much smaller proportion of people are getting jobs that way now because a huge proportion of employers are recruiting directly. They've employed people like me over the last 10 years to set up recruitment functions in their business so that they don't have to use recruitment agencies and consultancies, so that they are building talent pools which they can go back to time and time and time again for free candidates. Remember, if you're a direct candidate, you have a gift tag around your neck equivalent to what your recruitment fee would have been had you gone through a recruiter. You're in a really strong position, but you have to work hard. You have to do the stuff recruiters do. And a lot of what we do is helping candidates become their own recruitment consultants.
Yeah, but on that note too, remember that there are some great recruiters out there, and their job is to match you effectively to their companies and their roles. So the ammunition they need to match you is what you're looking for, your elevator pitch, your key expertise, and how they can match you with those key achievements. So don't discount recruiters. Do your research. Find out in your network who the good ones are. Do some searches on LinkedIn to find the good ones. And also, if you keep looking if you do look on job boards and you keep seeing the same recruitment company advertising over and over again, there'd be ones that I would want to phone call because they're actively looking in the market. And there's some really good news from recruiters saying that they're really, really busy. And they do have good relationships with companies. I used to be a recruiter and had some great relationships with companies that would come to me first. But it's hard for you out there to know which ones to go to. So ask around, ask in your network, and have some calls. Sometimes you will, a good recruiter is worth their weight in gold.
And I think job hunting is a team sport, and we have to remember that you if you're working with a recruiter, you can be a great candidate or you can be a pain in the neck. They can be a great recruiter or they can be a pain in the neck, and you need to pick those you can work with, and you need to do the things that they need you to do, and they should do the things that you need them to do, and accept that it's this team working together. And once you get into an interview process, there's an additional member of that team. It's the employer, but the employer wants, in a way, what you want. They want to employ the best person for the role, and you want to be in the best job you can be in. And working together to find out whether this is the time that happens isn't a bad thing. They're not the opposition. There is more, and it happened in 2008 as well, because I'm an old bloke, but there is a high level of promotion of this idea that recruiters and employers are the bad guys and the candidates are the victims. And to a very small extent, that might be true. But as soon as you take on a victim mentality in your social media posting, you've got problems. And I think that's really, really important. Keep positive and understand what people want to do, and what they're there for. You never see recruiters slagging off employers. So why do you see candidates slagging off employers? I don't understand that. Recruiters don't do it because that's where their money comes from. Candidates shouldn't do it because that's where the employment is going to come from. So just bear that in mind. I had a question from Eduardo, and it's a really good one because I don't really know the answer to this. You guys might have a better opinion than I do. Do you actually think that those courses, LinkedIn learning courses, are actually relevant? Do recruiters value them?
Are they relevant? I think that's the key is what you want to upskill on. So if you wanted to learn about coaching or learn about change transformation, then you might want to look on LinkedIn Learning or Udemy or Coursera and do an online course. a lot of learning is going online. Some of the LinkedIn learning events, I know people have been on and loved them, and others they really didn't. So you're always going to get some good ones and some not so good ones out there. I watched a few that helped in terms of clients really struggling with the emotions of change and going through transition. So there are some good ones out there. Depends what you want to learn. But it's hard to pigeonhole and to say that they're all really good or they're all not. You know, it's a case of what would you like to upskill on? Have a look on LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, Udemy. See if there's something that you want to do. Have a look at professional bodies in case they're doing a live event. Think about your learning preference. You know, I personally don't like sitting and doing a load of just listening to videos all the time. I like live interaction. So think about your learning style. But if you like doing that side, then yeah, you can absolutely upskill.
James?
So my perspective, especially if you're looking for for a lot of people out of work at the moment, okay, the question is, what the heck why are you doing with your time, right? So if you're out of work and you're taking courses and you're showing how it's relevant to what you're passionate about and what you wanted to apply for, that shows how proactive you are as well. So yes, I'm out of work and I'm looking for work, but I'm also upskilling myself as well. So even if it's a LinkedIn course or Udemy or any of these other courses, if it's relevant for what you want to do anyway, that shows the manager that, hey, this one's really passionate about what this and they're really interested, and let's have a chat with him to see what else he's doing.
I think, and Baz has just said as well, as long as courses are relevant for you, then I think you should go ahead. I think so too. I think that when people use LinkedIn Learning or any open access learning to try to evidence what is clearly already evidenced in their CV, it has very little value. I don't think it's a final tick in the box that you have been a project manager for 10 years. You haven't put any evidential data in your CV about the size of the projects, your ability to deliver on time or on budget. You haven't put that, but you said, I've done a project management course on LinkedIn Learning. That doesn't cut it. If it's about where you are going to and it's aspirational and it's your development, or you're trying to evidence transferable skills to move from one market to another, I think it has real value. And that point that it's how you're using your time productively to improve yourself and make yourself a better solution for your potential employer, a higher return on investment for your potential employer, and you're showing you have potential. You're driving towards learning. I think that's really, really valuable. So I think that's a really, really good question. Colin says that he thinks that they have value, but won't help if they're going up against candidates with 10 years of practical experience. I think that's absolutely right. And that's a really valid point from Colin, is that sometimes I get asked, well, how do I beat someone who has 10 years experience when I have 3? Well, the answer is unless there are cultural and potential evidenced in your CV, there are sometimes the answer is, well, you won't. And we have to be realistic about that. I think as career coaches, we have to say that's a job you're not going to get, because they're asking for something really specific, and they ask for it for a purpose, and they know what they're talking about. And you don't qualify, but I think there are a lot of people in the market who do. So I think in that process, you have to evidence, or you have to work out what are the essentials. And if you don't have them, and you think a lot of people will, then you probably have to downgrade that as a high priority application for yourself and be realistic. But in terms of learning, I think it can really improve it a great deal. One thing I'd just like to talk on last, we're just about up to our hour, is the point about setting targets and measuring yourself, so that there is this embedded concept of continuous improvement in your job hunt. So you recognize you can do everything better. I mean, hopefully if you come on this call next week, we'll be better at it. That was a bit of a royal we. That was me just hiding then, because what I actually meant is I'll be better at it. But I knew these guys could take the fall with me, so that's all right. But yeah, we are all trying to improve all the time. But when you are in a process, then I think and job hunting is a process, and you have to understand your part in that process. if you can evaluate your performance on measurable things, the number of CVs that you have got out, the number of recruiters you've engaged with, whatever it is, I personally find that satisfying for me. And when I was a recruiter, it wasn't about how many placements I made. It was about how many employers I'd spoken to, how many jobs they trusted me with, how many candidates I'd spoken to about those roles, then how many candidates had I submitted, how many had I followed up. At the very end of that, hopefully there was a placement and I got paid some commission, I paid my mortgage. But I only got to the mortgage payment because of all those other little steps I took. And I think that's very similar in job hunting. What are your views on measuring yourself? Suzanne.
I think it's really key to keep a log of your activity so that you can see what is working and what isn't. I find in terms of people measuring themselves, I'll get people that say to me, I've sent my CV to 200 roles and I've got nothing. And my key bit is, why did you send it to 200 roles and get nothing without really stopping and refocusing? Or they'll say to me, I've had 40 interviews and I've got nowhere. And I'll say, okay, so what interview coaching have you had to help you nail these interviews? And I see people becoming so much more confident with interviews from just one coaching session. So measure what's working and what's not. And if you feel that you are just, on that treadmill and getting nowhere and nowhere, then stop and reevaluate and take that helicopter view. That's key for me.
Yeah. James?
So when I work with clients, one of the first questions I ask them is how do they rate their CV resume for themselves on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being amazing, right? And whatever number they give me a sense of confidence of how they feel about how they've marketed themselves on a piece of paper. Okay, so I always work with them because I've had it as low as 2 and even a 1, Simon, okay, and Suzanne. So for me, it's like before I even work on looking outside, I need to work on the inside with them to build up their confidence and show the value of what they do. So I always say to people, your CV and your resume is not just for recruiters. Your CV and resume is also a record of achievements of all the amazing stuff that you've done in the past. And what I see a lot of people having problems with is they don't know how to articulate and market themselves on a piece of paper to help them feel good first before they start applying out. Because I said, if you're rating your CV resume a 2 out of 10, how are you supposed to expect the hiring manager or the recruiter to see something in your 2 out of 10 that you wrote that you can't see for yourself? So that's one of the things I work with people to build the confidence first before out. And if so, as Suzanne says, is yes, she says sending applications out, but you need to be working on how many interviews or callbacks you're getting off the back of that. Because if you're applying for 200 and you're not getting any back, then something there needs to be changing as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I'll just quickly go to Michelle's question. Yes, it is recorded. LinkedIn puts this up automatically. But Michelle, if you go to the LinkedIn one, there's going to be about a minute and a half of a recording first. And it's going to end with me going, I don't think anyone can hear us. So we stopped it. So
I popped off because my
there was a little bit of a false start to start with, but the session, which is now just over an hour, will be there, and it will be there in perpetuity. So you'll see all our mistakes and errors for as long as you want to, and you can revisit them. And we're setting up a little LinkedIn group so that all of these recordings will be accessible to people whenever they want them as well. And we try to answer other questions as well as we go forward. That's kind of our time now. We're up for about an hour, and the only thing left, in fact, we've done it perfectly. We did set targets, we got to measuring. Fantastic. But that's by fluke. We talked about doing a little resilience framework thing. I'm going to put it up onto LinkedIn. It's just a 5 E's framework that you can bed certain activities into your day to help build that in from an early day. I won't go through that now. Just like to say thank you, particularly first of all to Suzanne and James. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope that those of you who have been watching have got stuff out of it, because I've learned a lot. I do this for a living, and I've learned a lot from you guys today. So thank you very much indeed.
More important for me is that people have found it useful. That's the key. It's no problem giving up our time. As long as people have found it useful, then we're delighted to be here.
Yeah, we've had a few that have suggested that might have been the case. So that's brilliant. The Jobs Lab will continue to do these. They will get even better But obviously, we'll never have such fantastic guests again. But these have been brilliant. So thanks very much, James and Suzanne. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Keep an eye out for the live one, and we'll get stuff up next time we're going to do another one. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. All the best to you.
Cheers.